Job, the 14th chapter, he says in verse 1, man that is born of a woman is a few days and full of trouble. So you don't live very long. People, people can live 100 years, but when you look at the scheme of things and when you look at time, really, that's a very short amount of time. So he said, man that is born of a woman is a few days and full of trouble. You think about it, when he made you become God, and God is eternal, and yet we only live 70, 80 years. You have those anomalies that may live 100 years, but on average, we about approximately 70 years. That's what we have on this earth. Man that is born of a woman is certainly a few days and full of trouble. He cometh forth like a flower and is cut down. He fleeth also as a shadow and continueth not. So just like a flower was there one day and you're smelling the flower and it looks nice, but then next thing you know it's cut down. Or when you look at a shadow one moment and then you turn the next moment and you don't see it again. Same thing with man. Then he says in verse 10, but man dieth and wasteth away. Yea, man giveth up the ghost. What's the ghost? Ghost is synonymous for spirit. What spirit does he give up? He gives up the breath of life. Hold your finger there just to show you what I'm talking about. Let's go to the book of let's go to the book of Matthew. Just to show you. Because ghosts, see, again, you have to qualify things. You have to qualify when you say spirit. What spirit? You hear that? You see that word spirit all throughout the Bible. So what spirit is he talking about? So here we see in verse Matthew 27 and verse, just so we know that we talking about the crucifixion here of the Messiah. And in verse 46 it says, at about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Ele, Ele, lama sabachthani, it is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Then in verse 50 it says, Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. What ghost? The ghost that he yielded up is none other than the breath of life. That's what he's talking about. All right. And when you look at it in beyond English, you see that's talking about his breath. So it says in Job, the 14th chapter, he says in verse 12, so man lieth down. Or verse 10, it said, but man died and wasted away. Yea, man giveth up the ghost, and where is he? As the waters fell from the sea and the flood decayeth and dried up, so man lieth down and riseth not. Again, he says, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Then he said, from dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. He said, the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread till thou return into the ground, for out of it wast thou taken, from dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. So he says, so man lieth down and rises not. So you lie down. So the dead are in the grave. If they died yesterday, they're in the grave. If they died 10 years ago, they're in the grave. If they died 1,000 years ago, they're in the grave. Even as Peter said, referring to David, he said his sepulchre is with us until this day, meaning David is still there, but there was one who was resurrected, and now that was none other than Jesus the Christ. And he is paving the way for everybody else who was seen righteous to be resurrected. Jesus Christ, the first fruits, they that are Christ at his coming. What he did, he showed you what's going to happen to those who are found worthy. But notice, he went in the grave, and then when they went to see him, or when they looked in, he was gone. When they rolled the stone away, they looked at the sepulchre. In the sepulchre, he was gone. So now here, Job, he says, so man lie down and rise and not. Then he says something, till the heavens be no more. They shall not awake nor be raised out of their sleep. Then he says, oh, that thou wouldest hide me in the grave, that thou wouldest keep me secret until thy wrath be past. Because he, understand, when he comes back, I said, Jesus Christ, the first fruits, they that are Christ at his coming. The heavens going to be rolled back like a scroll. The earth and the moon, the sun is going to be dark and the moon shall not give it light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. This is a sign of the second coming. You're going to have a battle of Armageddon. Where this earth's going to be burned, a few men left, where he's going to rain down fire upon his earth. And he says, in flaming fire, taking vengeance on them that know not God and that obey not his gospel. And he said, oh, that thou wouldest hide me in the grave, that thou wouldest keep me secret until thy wrath be past. That thou wouldest appoint me a set time and remember me. Now, Job was saying, when I die, he said, hide me, keep me secret until thy wrath be past. Habakkuk talked about that wrath. He said his belly trembled when he invades them with his troops. But then he says that thou wouldest appoint me a set time and remember me. He said, if a man die, shall he live again? Now, we know that man dies. We've been seeing death, but the minister tell you don't die. They tell you to go to heaven, but the Bible tells you you're not going to heaven. Hold your finger here. You dead. See, you all the way in the ground, and you stay in the ground. Let's go. You're not going to heaven. Hold your finger there in Job. See, that's our problem. Our problem is we listening to a bunch of liars. Our problem is that we have taken the belief systems of other people and implemented them into the interpretation of what the Bible is saying. So where therefore, when you do that, you change the word of God. You don't have to add or take away. Who are you to add or take away? Who am I? Nobody. Nobody at all. The gospel according to John. So you're not going to heaven. You ain't going to heaven. You ain't going to heaven. You ain't going to heaven. John, the 3rd chapter, verse 13, it said, no man hath ascended up to heaven, but he that came down from heaven, even the Son of Man, which is in heaven, after his death, burial, and resurrection, he ascended into heaven. But everybody else is in the grave. He told you, and no man hath ascended up to heaven, but he that came down from heaven, even the Son of Man, which is in heaven. See, you're not going to heaven. And he told you whether he went, you can't even come. You're not even coming. So now just to show you that, real quick, let's go to John the 13th chapter. Real quick. He says it in more than one place. But he says, actually, John 13 and verse 33 says, while I'm with you, ye shall seek me. And as I said unto the Jews, because he said it more than once, you can read it in John the 7th chapter, John the 8th chapter. He said, whether I go, ye cannot come. So now I say unto you. So now you will be in the grave. Job 14 and verse 14. He said, if a man dies, shall he live again all the days of my appointed time? Will I wait till my change come? What change? He's talking about the change of body. You're going to shed this earthly tabernacle. You're going to get rid of this tabernacle. And you're going to have a celestial one. He's talking about the change in body. He said, thou shalt call and I will answer thee. Thou shalt have a desire to the work of thine hand. What are you talking about? You're going to call and I'm going to answer thee. Last place, John, the 5th chapter. John, the 5th chapter, here the Messiah tells us, he gives us insight into what Job was talking about. He says, marvel not at this. John 5 and 28, marvel not at this, for the hour is coming in the which all that are in the grave shall hear his voice. He said, you go call and I'm going to answer. And shall come forth they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation. So it isn't that death doesn't happen. It isn't that death doesn't exist. You are dead when you give up the ghost. And you are there into the time of the resurrection. So if he's going to resurrect you, you need to find out, or can resurrect you, you need to find out what you need to do in order to be resurrected, in order to get out of the state of death. Last place, I said that John was last place. 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter. 15 and 20 said, but now is Christ risen from the dead and become the first fruits of them that slept. He's the first begotten of the dead. He's that wave offering that you read about to the Pentecost. He said, for since by man came death, by man came also the resurrection of the dead. By man came death, talking about Adam. but the resurrection came through the Messiah, the Mashiach, the Christ. It said, for as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. But every man in his own order. See, he tells you the order of things. But every man in his own order, Christ the first fruits. Afterwards, they that are Christ at his coming. I'm going to skip all the way down to verse 51. He said, behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep. That's a euphemism for dead. But we shall be changed. Job said, I'm going to wait until my what? My change come. He said, in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. The trumpet signifies the going to war, the gathering of the people, and the coming of a king. You'll hear all that at his second coming. He's coming to wage war. He's coming to establish his kingdom. That's the coming. That's his coming is announced through a trumpet. When he came on Mount Sinai, the trumpet waxed louder and louder. That wasn't blown by a man. It was blown rather by angels. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound. It's the gathering of the people. But understand, it's the gathering into the God family. The resurrection. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass this death is swallowed up in victory. That last enemy of man, which is death, that has been winning, has been victorious over us ever since the days of Adam. It'll be said, oh, death, where is thy sting? Oh, grave, where is thy victory? So that's just something on the state of death, brothers and sisters. And with that, I want to remind you that we at the Household of Faith meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel, as well as at www.israelteach.org. If you've been edified through the ministry, through the messages that you hear, you can leave a donation on our website. Again, www.israelteach.org. 100% of the proceeds go to the work of the ministry, not in our pockets. And with that, brothers and sisters, it is always my prayer that you were edified.